Hello everyone, it's author Sandra Wilson again, and this is another episode of the Creative Writer's Toolbox. I'm doing these episodes to give you some ideas of what you could keep on your shelf to inspire storytelling skills within your kids. These are just some fun activities and games that you can do or to have handy that they can do when they're bored, to some little practice lessons, things like that, just to get them a little bit of help for building their stories. So today I want to talk about dice. Now that seems like a very strange thing to use to write stories, but I'll give you some examples of what I mean. Now I don't know about you, but I always have this jar full of dice. So after we've played a game, maybe one of the dice has left the box, I put it in the jar because I'm not always sure which game it's supposed to go to. Sometimes we lose a dice, and so I can reuse one of those dice from the game. Sometimes there's extra dice if I pick up a game from a used store or something like that. Sometimes there's an extra dice in there, and sometimes it's just dice that I've bought for other things. Maybe the game has been ruined and I've kept the dice just because, you know, you always need a jar of dice. Now, I'm not talking just about the dice, the regular dice with the numbers on it, although I will give you an example of how to use that. But different types of dice that you might find as well. I have a dice here that has different shapes on it. I'm not sure what game it has come from. I just have it in my dice jar. So just things like that, you might have ones with letters on them if you've had a game like that. Colors, this one is a big one, but sometimes in the younger games there's dice that just have colors on them for their color recognition, so you may have one of those dice lying around. So anyway, a jar of dice is a great thing to use to build storytelling skills. So let me give you an example. Okay, so if we have this number dice and we have this shape dice, for example, we could use the two things together. So the shape dice you could roll, and when you get to a shape, you could challenge the child to draw something using that shape. You could use the number dice and challenge them to try to draw that many different things using that shape. You could do the same with the color. Use the number and the color dice and challenge them to draw, say they draw a 4 and an orange color on the dice. So say that's what they roll. So you can draw 4 things that are orange and then use those 4 things to create some sort of story. The same with the shape. Draw something using the shape and see if you can use that as a character in your story or as a place in your story. So you can inspire stories that way. There's also, I found at the dollar store, these dice that just have whiteboard faces on them, and so you could use those to write or draw pictures on. So I've written the word cat and mountain, for example, with a dry erase marker, and so you fill them all up and then you roll the 2 dice together and it'll come up, say, with cat and mountains, and now you need to create a story about a cat and the mountains. So is the cat climbing the mountains? Is it lost in the mountains? Is the cat as big as a mountain? There's all sorts of ways you can work those things into a story. So the dice are pretty handy to have around because you never know what kind of storytelling skills you can build with just letters, numbers, shapes, colors, things like that. There is a Discovery Toys item called Topic Cubes, and this is a game that plays that when you roll and it gives you a letter and it gives you a picture, and then you're supposed to come up with something to represent the picture that starts with that letter. So for example, this would be E and tree, so you could say elm tree because that is an E and a tree. But you could also use this as your storytelling things, much like how the other dice were used. So, so you've got E and you've got a tree. So you can can you create a forest that starts with E? So let's say we create a evergreen forest and we call it Everdale. And so now we have a place, Everdale. Let's build the story. So maybe we roll the dice again. We roll the dice again, and now I have fish and D. So, sorry, D. So what can we do with fish and D? Can we name our character? Can we make it a type of fish? You know, can we make it a I mean, Dora actually was a fish that started with a D, but we wouldn't want to use somebody else's character. But what could you maybe say dolphin? I know it's not really a fish, but you know, it's in the water with a fish. it's not about making it exact. Obviously, the Topic Cube game bases on things like that. But when you're doing it as a storytelling device, you don't need it to be perfect. The idea is, what does it inspire? If you get a D and a fish, what does that inspire? Does it inspire some sort of story? Does it inspire some sort of character? Does it inspire some sort of place? So maybe you think, oh, a fish and D, that reminds me of underwater. It doesn't start with a D, but if that's what it reminds you of, move the story along using those things. So again, Topic Cubes, which gives you more than just one set of dice. There's a set of dice in the box to play the game. As you can see here, there's a set of dice in the box to play the game. But what I'm saying is, if you have this and you can play it as a fun game with the kids, as a family, with even your friends, but you could also keep the dice on your shelf with all your other dice that you have in your collection and use them to build storytelling skills in kids as well. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk to you again next time about more that you can add to your Creative Writer's Toolbox.